Hello, everybody. Before we get started this week, first of all, it's your boy, Michael McMillan, and your other boy,
Riley Bray.
Hi, guys.
Otherwise known as Ya Boys.
Ya Boys.
You just
Ya
get
BCC
one,
Boys.
and then the other.
Yep. So we are doing some really fun Patreon unlocks through the month of December. Now, remember, if you're not a Patreon member of BCC The Other Side over at patreon.com/BigfootCollectorsClub, this episode is brand new to you. And if you're already a member of The Other Side, guess what? We're making new episodes over on BCC The Other Side all month long because the Patreon does not rest. That
right.
must keep going. Your boys have to rest every now and then, but your Patreon cannot.
It's the Pony Express.
That's how it happens. So
That's right.
This first episode that we're unlocking is a episode that I felt was integral to Wet Hot Alien Summer 3 Saucerama. It's one of my favorite high strangeness cases of all time. This is the Casa Blanca Entities.
Yes.
The kids in the 1950s who have a very weird encounter with, I'm going to go ahead and say, a fleet of flying saucers in their backyard. It's good stuff.
What are the sort of the, give them a preview. What are the bullet points of this case again?
How about aliens that look like ghosts? How about a floating metallic arm beckoning children to board a UFO at the top of a tree?
Yes, very Yellow Submarine. One of my favorite parts.
Very trippy, and it's very weird.
Yeah.
I love it. I love this case. It blows my mind. So here you go, everybody. Enjoy the Casablanca Entities. Bigfoot Collectors Club presents
Wet Hot Alien Summer 3 Saucerama.
Saucerama.
I thought I saw a flying saucer.
Saucerama!
Flying saucers.
Saucerama.
Beep, beep, boop, boop.
Ooh, wait, that's one classic saucer.
Saucerama. You do the horse math. Hello, everybody, and welcome to BCC The Other Side, the parallel dimension to Bigfoot Collectors Club. I'm your host, Michael McMillan. Not with us today is your other host, your alternate host, Bryce Johnson. But in the virtual clubhouse, you got the one, the only,
Riley Bray. Oh, I don't know. I jumped it.
Fine.
I was so excited.
You know what? You're excited. Hey, Riley, welcome back. How are you?
I'm good.
We're two. Bryce is in an undisclosed location for this record. And Riley and I are two hot. I mean, we're hot boys. But we're also hot boys in the middle of this July heat in Los Angeles. Few things going on. We had banked a bunch of episodes, so this is actually the first time that these boys have recorded together in a little while. We're in the time machine. Riley, I'll say this first. I've had COVID for about 2.5 weeks.
He had COVID, and then he got COVID
I got it again.
Somehow.
Back to back, baby. And then Riley you've been in Europe.
Yeah, for like
Which
3.5 weeks or something.
We were
like
very excited about it. So we broke while Riley was away. And I got to ask, because we have not had a chance to catch up, for the dear Patreons, how was your trip? You played in Berlin? You played in Austria?
Yeah.
Tell us all about it.
Okay.
Also,
well,
did you get squirted with water guns in Barcelona?
we left like 2 weeks before that all started. But we did see that graffiti on the walls that said "tourist go home," and we're like, "But
they're
not
upset.
us, though, right? We're cool."
They're upset. Their living expenses are getting too high, and they're not getting seeing any of that tourist economy over there.
Honestly, I get it. Like Barcelona was overrun with tourists.
Really?
Like I think the most telling thing was like we went to the Picasso Museum, and like I love Picasso. I know, whatever problematic person moving on. I love his art very much.
Yeah, you love the squiggly lines on that canvas.
I do. It's great. Yeah. We get to this museum, and I'm like, "There's no fucking way I'm going in there." Like it was just like so overrun with like the just like the epitome of tourist, the platonic ideal of tourist, you know.
Yeah.
And I was just, and then there's like these like swarms of like screaming children, and I was just like, I want to go in there and enjoy this, and I won't. So I'm just I'm not going to do it.
Did you do the Sagrada de Familia?
It was sold out.
Oh, I'll tell you.
He didn't do that either.
It's gorgeous, but I'll say out of all the wonderful things, and I saw it. I mean, it's, this thing has been being built for what, 80 years now, 70 years. When I saw it, it was 2001. And my favorite takeaway was there were columns that had giant turtles, like tortoises, holding up the columns, and that was my favorite.
Those
that was my
turtles
favorite
and
part.
lizards.
I loved it.
We did see some other Gaudi buildings that
Did
were.
you do the park, the Gaudi Park?
It was also sold out.
Really?
We went.
Oh,
We're like, but what do you mean? It's a park, like it's, and then we sort of like walked around where we could see inside of it. And we're like, oh yeah, no, I don't want to go in there either.
So what did you do on this trip?
We just walked and ate so much amazing food, and I carried around a camera, and I just did like a bunch of street photography and architecture photography, and took pictures of Caitlin, and I bought a bunch of like cool shirts by like local designers, like small batch, like handmade, like just great, amazing things. Just like, we did go to a spa one day, which was really nice. I gotta say,
Yeah.
the little bougie bitch in me was like, okay, yeah, I can get into this. I can get into this.
Yeah, treat yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It's a challenge for me to switch into full on vacation mode. In all
very
honesty,
hard.
but
No, I know.
once I was in it, I was like, this is very good. We also spent some time in Lisbon, Portugal.
Oh, I really want to go there.
I love that city. It's
I hear
so
it's amazing.
so cool, and it's just, you can see like this confluence of history of like all these very different cultures all coming together, because like it's like one of the oldest cities in Europe, and it goes like way back to like early trade routes, and it's at this sort of crossroads between like North Africa and Europe. So you can see like in the architecture, it'll be like sort of like, very old, like Islamic inspired architecture, but then like this like old world European kind of architecture. And then also they overthrew the fascists in the mid 70s and like rebuilt a bunch of stuff. So then a bunch of stuff also looks like it's like 80s Miami Vice, like
cool.
Yeah. And like all of these things like coming together into this like very old city with just like super diverse population. You're hearing all these different languages spoken, and it just felt like a magical kind of like cyberpunk, like,
Wow.
I don't know. It was just, I loved that city so much. And we just walked and walked and walked. It's very hilly. Like it's a good like butt workout city. You're really like climbing up stairs, but these like old cobblestone stairs, I was thinking this is funny. This is like guy who's never been to Europe talks about going to Europe for the first time.
Have you never been? This is your first time?
I've never been to Europe.
I'm kind of shocked by that, to be
I know.
honest.
I've been all over the world. I've been to Bangladesh, but I hadn't been to Europe. Like, I always just, when I was young, I was really stubborn that I wasn't going to go to Europe until I went like, till like a band took me to Europe.
Well,
I don't
you got
know
your
why.
wish.
I know it took long enough. I don't know why I was so stubborn about that, but it finally happened.
So tell us about the shows. You're playing with Pussy Riot.
Yes, playing with Pussy Riot. So the first show was in Linz, Austria, which at this museum called OK Linz, and it's kind of like, it's not like a major museum. It's like Linz is a smaller town. It's a really cool museum, and they put on, it was Nadia's first solo museum show, and they did a great job installing it. It was really great, and we to like kick off the show, which is still up. If you're in Europe and you happen to make it through Linz, you should really go check it out. And a lot of this stuff that I filmed that's in that show, which is really cool to see. Frames that I shot like on a museum wall. That was a first. That felt really cool.
That's rad, dude. Congrats.
Yeah, really, really exciting. And they did a great job presenting the show. And she debuted a bunch of new works, and it's like excellent. I'm very proud to be a part of it. But so yeah, so like kicking it off, we did a show where we performed under this giant knife suspended by a chain, it's like a 20-foot like knife blade just like suspended above us in this like very brutalist kind of concrete hall. And the show was awesome, and a bunch of people came out, and one of those people was of one of the museum directors for the Neue National Gallery in Berlin, which is like a big museum. And he invited us to come bring the show there since we were all still in Europe. And so that was like all put together while Caitlin and I were on vacation over in Portugal and Spain, and all the pieces came together, and then flew into Berlin, did the show the next day. It was truly bonkers. Like the police ended up designating it as a protest, because it was not a show. And they Nadia designed these banners, these giant pink banners that she dropped from 3 of them from the like front of the museum. We played in the square, like in front of the museum, so it's like out in public. There's like a street, going by, and the banners were in Russian, and they said "Love is stronger than fear," which is a Navalny quote. And the police estimated about 2,500 people showed up, and we had this massive PA system. It was so loud, and just making this, like, the music we're making is like crazy. It's abstract, aggressive, like intense, and so we're just making this huge noise in the center of Berlin, and there's just thousands of people everywhere, and like people are standing on top of buildings, and like the cars are going by, just like this. And it started raining like pretty hard, so people are there's 2 people holding a tarp over me, and I'm underneath a tarp just like turning all these knobs, and like if you think this is Mad Professor, you should see me performing at
the very end where you're like, hey guys, I have a podcast called Bigfoot Collectors Club if anybody wants to listen.
Wants to check it out, or it's cool, you might like it. But like this, like
I'm just laughing because you're doing this like important moment, specific moment in time, protesting like fascism, authoritarianism regimes,
exactly.
And I'm like looking at a COVID test for the 3rd day in a row.
Just like, oh God damn it. we all take turns keeping the lights on,
Oh my
keep
God,
this thing running. But yeah, there was this it's funny. There was this one moment though where it's like it had been dumping rain, and like people were holding this tarp, and I'm playing on this tarp, and I poke my head out, and there's a giant rainbow in the sky.
Wow.
And these like dark clouds, and then all these people, and all these cops, and like it was just like, and like part of this performance too, Nadia had like 50 women show up that were all wearing these pink balaclavas, and they created this like sort of flying V formation that defined like the performance areas, and they're just standing there just looking so hard and so tough. And so just like being behind this just like wall of women, and then Nadia's like out at the front, and just like thousands of Germans, it's just like it was like it's indescribable.
Sounds like a dream, like a literal dream.
It literally,
like it sounds
totally.
like something you'd be like, I was playing in the show in Berlin, and there's like all these police there, and then like thousands of people, and all these women with like pink balaclavas on. It was really weird.
Yeah. And then the last song that we released, these like pink smoke, I don't know what you call them, the smoke signal things they used to like signal helicopters. Like we had them on the roof, and so then all this pink smoke like billows up, and it joins the clouds, and there's this like rainbow, and it's like pouring. It was just like, it was wild, indescribable. One of the coolest things I've ever gotten to be a part of.
Wow.
I
really hope there were some BCC folks out there watching.
Frida's brother was there.
Hey, Frida's bro! Right on. I love that.
Yeah. But yeah, so there will probably be more. We're not. This is not a band. It's like a performance art project.
Yeah.
So we're not doing like venues, but there will be more of these, and I'll definitely let everybody know.
Oh my
God,
dude!
Dude, I'm in love with Europe. I don't know. It's so great.
Doesn't it just feel old?
Yeah.
And fun.
Yeah.
Like the history.
And like sitting down and getting a glass of wine for €3 is,
come on, baby,
like magical. Like what something is we got tricked or something.
Guys, book us a venue, guarantee us 300 people will come out.
We'll come. Oh yeah, we're there.
We'll do it. Anybody listening? UK, someone in UK who books venues. Come on, get us out there.
Together.
Get us to London.
Let's get your boys. Across the pond.
Come. Amazing. I want to hear all about it. I'm sure we're going to hear little bits and pieces as the summer goes on. So congratulations. It's truly man. So cool. Well, let's jump into Collectors Club. Wait. Commenters Club. Little rusty boys and girls and non-binary friends. Riley, what does our dear friend Tom Fennell have to say?
Tom Fennell says this. Howdy. My first comment since signing up. Now, Sunny D sure seems like a character, but I can't help being reminded of two things. One, the lights and overall story seem so familiar to the Rendlesham Forest incident in the UK in the 80s. Yeah, good point. That's me talking. Two, the 3 marks on his hat and machete sure do remind me of the Predator targeting device.
Where's Bryce when you need him?
I know, seriously. Anyway, another banger of an episode. Can't wait to catch more Other Side content. Loving the show.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, we're of course talking about the Florida Everglades flying saucer attack with our favorite high strangeness character, Sunny D.
Sunny D.
Yeah, it does. You're right. The red light stuff does feel like Rendlesham, very similar to Rendlesham Forest. So that's a good note on the story.
It is, yeah, right there in the sort of the story archetype. You know, there's meat on the bone.
Now we're going back, same episode, to our comment from Abby Matthews, longtime listener, longtime patron.
Abby.
Abby says the UFO video at the end of the episode. Remember, we looked at that Crater Lake 16 millimeter film that looked like a little flying saucer shooting over Crater Lake. Abby says Crater Lake is a strange place. There are weird disappearances in that park that are documented in Missing 411, but another big mystery of that area is the lake's missing water. Crater Lake was formed when a volcano named Mount Mazama erupted 7,700 years ago to create a massive caldera. Michael, you may remember talking about Mount Mazama during your Shasta episode with Matt Gorley a few years back. Abby, I do not, but thank you for the reminder. Over the course of several hundred years after forming the caldera, the lake is filled with only rain and snowmelt water. No rivers or streams enter it, making it one of the deepest and clearest lakes in the world. However, much of this water goes missing. The lake's precipitation rates are more than double the evaporation rate, so a lot of water is seemingly unaccounted for. Water seeps into the caldera's walls at the rate of about 2 million gallons of water an hour. By the way, Abby, well done on this comment, doing some research.
This is amazing, yeah.
But scientists are still trying to determine where that water goes because there are no nearby water sources that hold the same amount of water as the lake does. The Modoc and Klamath tribes have oral stories that tell of spirit beings coming down from a hole in the sky to form the mountain and claim that the god of the, quote, below world, end quote, lived inside of it. When that god battled with the god of the above world, who lived on Mount Shasta, he lost, and the Mount Shasta god forced him back underground and collapsed the mountain to seal him in. If you boys ever get an opportunity to see that part of the country, you won't regret it. It's such a gorgeous area. Thank you, Abby. I'll tell you where it's going. Them flying saucers are taking all that disgusting water.
No, it's the good water.
No, I don't like water. I ain't drinking water. Give me a good old moonshine.
A new layer of applesauce is that he hates drinking water.
Drinking water? What am I, walking through a desert? No, sir.
But applesauce, you're 80% water.
Oh, why don't you cut me open and take a peek?
What like 80% moonshine. I don't know, man. It's Hollow Earth, right?
Yeah, Hollow Earth, baby. It's going down to the Lemurians.
Speaking of Hollow Earth, I watched the new Godzilla King Kong movie on the plane. Oh,
yeah.
It's a great plane movie.
I kind of want to watch it. I've watched all of those fun. Monarch and they're very big on the Hollow Earth there.
Yes.
That's where King Kong's from.
Exactly. Oh, we spent some
Kong,
good time.
I should say. They can't legally call him King Kong in those movies. He's just Kong.
He's just Kong. Yeah. Well, we spent a lot of time in Hollow Earth there, but that's really weird though. In going back to the actual comment itself about like where does that water go?
Someone's got to figure that out. Seems like it should be pretty easy to discern. So, what scientists get on it? Let's figure it out.
Let's find this water.
Yeah, let's go find this water. Thank you, Abby. Thank you, commenter friends. Okay, let's get into our fun size high strangeness of this episode. Now, this story first came to light on this show. This is sort of a sequel. When we had, and again, it was just a Riley and Michael episode when Rob Christofferson was on with the humanoids episode. Yeah. And I had said, Rob, I keep seeing this thing about a multi-limbed being in Riverside, California in 1955. What's going on here? So I thought for Saucerama, because guys, it's Wet Hot Alien Summer 3, Saucerama happening all summer long right here on BCC, The Other Side, and on the main Clubhouse feed. I thought, okay, let's get into the story. Rob kind of gave us an overview about it, but I thought, I really want to go see what this story is all about.
Excellent.
So I researched it, I wrote up a nice piece, and then somewhere in the process of writing this Google Doc, it vanished. Just like that water, I don't know what happened to it. So I have a rough outline of this one. So I'm going to be dancing around not only my typos, like one that I see already where I spelled the last name Douglas is Douglas. But I'm going to try to fill in some of the missing information that was in the quote unquote final draft. But this is the Casablanca Close Encounters case.
We believe in you, Michael. You've got this.
On August 22nd, 1955, one of the weirdest close encounters of the third kind is said to have occurred in the backyard of the Douglas family in Casablanca, California, near Riverside. Now, Riverside's not too far from Los Angeles.
Okay, so I was wondering, we are talking about that Riverside.
Yeah, we're talking about California.
Basically LA.
Yeah, and this involves a group of young boys whose ages range between 4 and 14. And this is all in the backyard of we'll call him the lead boy, Kermit Douglas, okay? So Kermit Douglas was wrestling in the backyard with one of his buddies as all these boys are out playing in the backyard and the parents are hanging out inside of the house. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon is their mid-wrestling match. I'm sure, cheering Kermit and his buddy on. The boys look up to see this bright, luminous object hanging over the tree line. And as they all stop and stare at this thing, the object vanished and then was soon replaced by a spinning, saucer-like object that had curved, like phalanges, if you remember that word from your basic, kind of like a pinwheel. Like it had these like curved spikes, I guess, on the edge that were spinning around.
Little danglers.
Yeah, some little D's were dangling off of this saucer.
Got it.
So as they're looking at this thing, suddenly more disc-shaped objects begin appearing in the afternoon sky, appearing and disappearing with these musical pings that were similar to the sounds of bells as they're coming in. I know you would love this.
That's awesome.
Now, what followed is and I'm sure Bryce would agree with me, my feelings is the epitome of what is truly a high strangeness episode. It is a dreamlike encounter where the laws of physics and reality just give way to this cartoonish, dreamlike absurdity.
Awesome.
So a number of things start to happen kind of all at once. They start overlapping with each other. So I'm going to try, and we don't have all of the boys' names because they were protected when UFO researchers talked to all of them. So event A, we'll call it. Event A happens, which is all these discs are appearing in the sky. Suddenly, a big, multicolored disc that the boys described as being about the size of 3 houses appeared in the sky, and it landed in the neighboring field next to the backyard. And one of the boys approached the landed craft as the kids were yelling at him not to go. And they described, and I'm going to put up some in the Instagram. I will put up some eyewitness drawings. They described that there was like a sort of like antenna that almost looked like a radio tower type antenna on the edge of this craft, and this boy suddenly froze in place and couldn't move, and they think it was coming from this an unseen force being projected out of this antenna at the edge of this multicolored craft. So that's event A. Then, as that's happening, event B happens, which is 2 of the boys look over at the neighbor's house and they see a translucent being with a round head and square eyes and diamond-shaped cutouts where the nose would be. And it's floating above about a foot off the ground in front of the neighbor's house. And they said that they could see the wood like the siding of the house through this entity.
Crazy.
And the entity is basically tapering off in the eyewitness drawings, almost like a ghost, like how a kid would draw a ghost. But it wore a belt with a silver mirror-like disc as a belt buckle. And they said that the entity was carrying 2 gun-like instruments in each hand that it used to zap and freeze the boys.
Okay.
All right? And this sounds kind of like the Voronezh landing that we heard about in 1989, where there was like an entity came out, had a like wand. We hear about these wands where people get frozen. So event C takes place now, which is Kermit sees, the lead boy, sees an entity emerge from the main craft, the multicolored craft in the field. And this being had square eyes like the other one. They glowed red, a red mouth, and a pattern of diamond-shaped cutouts where its nose should have been. There were 4 cutouts. The being had 2 appendages that branched out at the elbows, splitting into 2 forearms with hands on each of those split forearms. And this creature moved about on 4 tentacle-like legs. And they said that it seemed to be dressed or composed of almost like a white silken fabric. So it's sort of robotic, it's sort of ghost-like, it's sort of alien-like.
Yeah, totally.
And this creature tells Kermit and one of the other boys, climb to the top of that tree, and we're going to come by in about 15 minutes, and we're going to pick you up, and you can go for a ride in our ship.
So like Flight of the Navigator shit.
Totally.
All right.
So this octopod, I guess, goes back into the ship. Kermit and his buddy walk over to the tree, and they start climbing the tree. And the boys are screaming at them to get down off the tree. And they are almost like in this trance-like state where they're being willed to climb up to the top of this tree. Now event D happens, which is as this is all going on, one of the other boys says that he saw a floating severed arm that was silver and about the size of a child's arm, and the arm hovered in the air and pointed to the roof of the house of the Douglas house.
Okay.
And the next thing he knows, this little boy floats. He says he slipped. The quote was, he slipped towards the roof.
Cool.
And suddenly he's just up on the roof and he has no idea about how he got up there.
Wow.
And then the other boys say that they saw him walk off the roof and fall directly on the top of his head, but land with no injuries. So,
Weird. So whoa, weird. Just like straight down, like a
yeah, just basically like fell off like an action figure off the shelf.
very cartoonish. Yeah.
So cartoonish.
Yeah.
So, meanwhile, Kermit and his buddy are up in the tree, and the other boys start throwing things at them. They get a hose, they hose them with the backyard hose, and finally, after they're sprayed with water, they're convinced to come back down to ground. And then they see, sure enough, one of these discs appears over the tree that they were just in, hovers there for a little while, and then vanishes. And then suddenly, the entire episode is over.
Wow.
The boys freak out. All the parents come outside. They've missed the entire show.
Of course.
They're like, we saw this, we saw that. They thought this was just their imagination. But in the weeks that followed, the kids were scared. They couldn't sleep. They were freaked out. They kept talking about it. And the story eventually gets around town. And allegedly, although it's one of these things that it's hard to track down, apparently the story was originally published in one of the Riverside local Riverside newspapers. And I went through Flying Saucer Review and some old Flying Saucer magazines from the 60s that were trying to trace back the origin of this from 13 years before, basically. And it seems that This story appeared in a local paper, and it caught the attention of the Advanced Science Research Associates, which was basically this paranormal group that had started in the 1930s in California. So it was basically like an early paranormal investigation group. And I think I'm getting that right because this is one of the names that I think it's called the Advanced Science Research Association. So a bunch of women from that group came out and they tracked down the kids and they spoke to the kids directly. And that's where a lot of this story comes from. But it was also written in an early UFO magazine called Saucer Bulletin by James W. Mosley. Now, I don't know where Mosley got this story. I don't think he spoke to the kids themselves. I don't know if he read the research done by this group. But James W. Mosley was friends with Gray Barker. And if you remember our Men in Black series, Gray Barker was the guy who sort of, alongside Albert K. Bender, created the Men in Black, or made famous the Men in Black, myth,
right.
Whether it's true or not.
Right.
And Gray Barker was also a bit of a hoaxer and a jokester.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that he was dressing up and running around as a Men in Black, or sending people to do it and harassing people in Point Pleasant during the Mothman stuff, just to fuck with people. He loved fucking with paranormal investigators. So he wrote about this story in Saucer Bulletin, and I think it basically didn't really catch on until later. And we kind of have to take whatever Mosley writes about with a grain of salt. But I was heartened to find that this other research group had actually spoken to these kids. So it can't be completely made up by Mosley. And then it also shows up by a woman named Carol Lorenzen wrote about it in the 70s book, The Humanoids, which talks about ET cases from this time period alongside stories like the Hopkinsville Goblin and the Socorro Saucer and all that stuff. But it's this fascinating case, and when we talk about high strangeness, this is really what we mean when we talk about it.
Yeah. The floating arm really got me too. That's like reminds me of like Yellow Submarine or something like that. And like that it points. Then it just like floats up and points.
It's all so trippy and so weird. I'm fascinated by this, like I said, and the thing that I love about it is it also brings to mind a couple other cases. One of them is the Area Phenom School case.
Sure, of course,
where kids seem to see these beings outside of the craft, but they seem to be like not in sync with our time space, and how they would watch like almost them get out of the ship in a loop, or they would be all the way on the other side of the field and suddenly they'd be right up in the kids' faces as if, they're not behaving according to our laws of physics. And also in that case, it's a bunch of kids playing outside where this mass event is basically taking place, and a bunch of grown-ups are just indoors.
Yeah, just missed it.
Oblivious to the whole thing, which I love because that also seems to hint at some sort of trickster element to this whole thing.
I was thinking about that a lot as you were telling the story, just like, like this whole thing we talk about how it's a interactive thing with our consciousness and presents itself in whatever way. So if it is presenting itself to a group of children whose like reality isn't so rigid and whose minds are maybe a little more flexible in what they'll perceive, like it goes into this more sort of cartoonish kind of just like defying like gravity and time and really
which
things like that,
things that can cross time and space should be able to do, because I feel like crossing that gap has got to be it's a flagrant abuse of space-time itself and the laws of physics. So here's one of the figures I'm going to show you. This is the translucent guy floating, cool. And then that sort of like robotic-looking thing under him is the floating arm.
That would be a great stick and poke tattoo.
Oh, hell yeah.
That little guy.
And then this is the being that popped out with like the four arms.
Are these drawings are they from the kids or from that organization that was
It's from
interviewing the kids?
I believe one of the women from the organization drew what the kids described. And I'll put all of these up in the Instagram where people can check them out. And here's like the fringes of the craft. Kind of looks like a saw almost, but with thin lines. And then that's the craft with the antenna as well. So all of this stuff will go on. It looks like a football with a glowing antenna on the side.
It is really cool that they this organization existed and took the time to interview all these kids individually and put all these pieces together.
Yeah, it was just we have to look more into this ASRA or whatever it's called, because it seems pretty interesting. It started by a guy and a couple guys that were like clearly spiritualists, but also parapsychologists, and like I think one of them studied at USC or one of the SC colleges, and they really got into all this Fortean subject matter basically before the UFO stuff really took off. It was pre-World War. It was kind of on the end of the spiritualist movement and right before all the UFO stuff took off. So they'd be worth learning more about. And then the other case that this reminds me of is the Sam the Sandown clown case out of England, where those two kids met that weird clown robot with the round head under a bridge, and he had like a weird room full of like dials, and he like put a berry through his eyes, like again.
When was that time period?
That I believe was in the 60s or 70s. Let me take a look. I'll do.
I think you're right about that. Yeah.
Sam the Sandown clown, because I picture all that. I picture a lot of that like brown polyester in the UK, very Monty Python era.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see it too.
Let's see, that was in 1973 in the Isle of Wight.
There you go.
The common Sandown Isle of Wight. So there you go. That's the case of the Casablanca Close Encounters. There was a little bit more there than I thought. Just a really weird case right in the middle of the 1950s, and a case that I think got written off pretty quickly and wasn't appreciated until the 60s, when like Flying Saucer Review was like, wait a minute, what about this weird case?
Yeah.
I don't think Project Blue Book ever got involved. It was not one of those things. But there was a lot of UFO activity happening in California around that time. There was another case about a year earlier up in Northern California where a woman and her son saw a flying saucer in their backyard, and they saw the occupants were they could see them. It was a canoe-shaped aluminum colored craft with a dome, and they could see 3 or 4 pilots inside that were wearing jumpsuits, and she said they all had like olive green skin. And they basically just sat there and looked at her and her son and then flew off. And her husband was like in the house. He had like a busted leg or something, and he missed the whole thing. So there's weird California activity happening around this time where people are seeing flying saucers and weird little green men and weird occupants. But these characters, these guys, these Casablanca entities are very, very, very strange.
Yeah, totally. This is a weird one.
Totally weird. Love it. All right, that's it for Saucerama this week. We will see you guys over on the main Clubhouse feed on Wednesday for a brand new episode. And then I want to let everybody know that our movie club movie for the end of the month is going to be Earth versus the Flying Saucers. This one was requested by a friend of the show, W. Dave Keith, and I looked into it, and we absolutely have to watch this movie. It's maybe a little bit more of a B movie than The Day the Earth Stood Still, which I'm very excited about. It's only 84 minutes. You can watch it for free on YouTube with ads. You can find it on Tubi, and you can find it on Amazon Prime and all the other streamers. So go check that out. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
That will be that's a great like summer B movie.
Yeah, and the screenplay was written by Donald Kehoe, who was one of the authors. He was a former military guy and one of the first guys to write a book about flying saucers called Flying Saucers Are Real. So it is cool. 50s B sci-fi movie written by an OG Golden Age ufologist.
Straight from the source.
Yeah, straight from the source. It's going to be a blast. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. Welcome back, Riley. We love you. Where there's love, there's kisses.
Thank you, Patreon.